Welcome everyone to another episode of Skills Talks, where we interview people that have been on a skill-based journey in some shape or form, and where we ask questions around skill-based organization, what it is, what the typical hurdles are, and share learnings around that. And today I'm welcoming Robert Gibby, who was the former director of people analytics at Meta, where he led teams that delivered insights and solutions on skills, career development, and workforce strategy. He developed tools like skill-based career frameworks, AI-driven recommendations for matching people to roles and learning opportunities, and predictive models to guide workforce planning and organizational effectiveness. Before that, he also worked for IBM, among others, on the Watson Capability Framework. Robert currently lives in Austin, Texas, a place where it seems the skill community is growing large enough for Robert to start chatting with strangers on the street about people analytics. A little fun fact there. But welcome to the podcast, Robert. We're very pleased to have you.
No, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, same here. And I'll kick off this conversation the way that I kick off all the conversations we've had so far, which is with a question from the previous guest. And it was asked to you only a week ago when I interviewed Meredith Wellard, who used to work at DHL and did a lot with skills in that organization. And her question was, what will be the most impactful decision driven by skills data in the future? What's really going to make the difference?
Yeah, and I think with this one, I'll actually answer it kind of quickly two ways. One, I think, is it's not just one decision. I think the fact that skills can be leveraged in different ways across the entire career journey of an employee and all the different ways that skills can be incorporated is kind of the power of using skills and leveraging skills and going with the skill-based organization. I think if I had to pick one specific decision or decision area where skills is really going to come into play, I think it's in rethinking, and I think industry has started to talk about this and we're starting to see some traction, but really rethinking how we think about a job and the formal kind of definition of a job, so that when we look at skills and we look at more project-based work, gig-based work, moving in that direction, being able to have people really leverage the capabilities that they have for the highest impact, highest priority, opportunities within the company. I think that's going to be the game changer in just the nature of work, and be assisted with AI and all the other things that are going to come with it. But I think skills underpinning that is going to be one of the big pieces that will help to push us kind of forward and through some of the barriers that exist for that today.
Mm. So for you, the key point is linking skills to jobs, making sure that the requirements around jobs, that those are very aligned, thanks to the skills data that's tied to that. Is that a correct summary?
Yeah, and I think even going beyond like the formal definition of a job into like project level, detail, and really understanding what's needed to get that work done and to be successful. So really, thinking kind of deeper and breaking down some of the silos and barriers we have to formal job architectures and formal positions, allowing for greater fluidity of talent within the organization. I think is one of the things that skills will really help us to kind of break through and be able to create just a different type of experience and set of opportunities for people as we move forward.
Awesome. I'll make sure to tell Meredith that you told me that on her question. Great. We already talked about skills with that first question, but taking a step back, we all know the space of skill-based HR and the way that it's developing, especially the past couple of years. But the path for experts to arrive at that space has varied greatly with the people I've spoken to already. And I'm curious what led you to take an interest in skill-based HR in general, and how you got how you got interested in the space in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an industrial organizational psychologist by training. So my first experience, coming out into the world of work from graduate school was in assessment and selection. So really designing interview processes, designing the assessments that Procter & Gamble used to hire people into the company all over the world. And so a lot of what goes into building those assessments, especially interviews, is really understanding the skills and capabilities that people need to be successful on the job and trying to identify that. That quickly grew then into trying to look at more of the career-based systems. Procter & Gamble is a little unique in it being a highly promote from within company. And so making sure we understood the competencies, kind of competency modeling was in vogue back in the day, and looking at those things that were more common and core across the company, and what we were looking at more towards the value statements and other elements that we have today in a lot of organizations, and then starting to get into functional differentiation and what some of the more technical skills and all of those things were. And so you start to kind of snowball then, into these career frameworks and into all the different ways that, we can start to leverage skills. And, I think the big impetus for kind of a skills-based organization was really coming from like a recruiting lens and realizing we have such rich information about people and their skills and what they can do and, what they have done. But we leave that like at recruiting, and we don't necessarily carry that forward into onboarding or into, the post-hire, opportunities and understanding, of what our people can do and how we can help them ramp and be successful, more quickly. And so really started to look at, how can we build this kind of framing, this picture, and this understanding of all these things that people possess, and how we can leverage that to help them be more successful across their career. And so that then got into some of the AI capabilities and some of the other, ways that we can really harness, some of that from a foundational level as I went into IBM and more recently at Meta. So humble beginnings, but saw the power of, skills like really across the ecosystem and across that journey.
Yeah, from skill-based recruitment to a more broad HR story to, hey, we actually need AI for this, for this to work. And if you look from that quick career lens up until today and the speed at which the space has been developing the past couple of years, how do you see the skill-based organization being portrayed today in the market? And in what way is it rightly portrayed, or are there misunderstandings about the concept?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, I think at Meta, one of the things that we struggled with is that I don't think there's a lot of people out there that disagree that skills are important, that skills are needed, that skills show up in a lot of different places. I think people, can look at, at any level from a center of excellence standpoint, HR business partner, a business leader, look at things like interviewing or look at things like learning and see skills as a component of those. I think the challenge that we have on the flip side of that is that skills tend to get narrowly defined. I think within what industry understands a skill to be in terms of a soft skill or a relational skill, maybe a technical skill, and really thinking about how to broaden that conceptualization and the building blocks or the pieces of what constitutes a skill that we can leverage to really understand what people are bringing and using from a knowledge standpoint, a capability standpoint to complete the work. So things like the technology that they're using, the tools that they're using. So really kind of expanding to some degree this core concept of what we mean by skills, and allowing some of these other concepts, I think, to come in and to be curated and defined, against jobs or against projects or against, whatever that elevation is that, we're really working with to be able to understand how people can come and be successful, operationalize that. So I do see, this broader understanding of what we mean by skills to be kind of knowledge and abilities and like these other concepts from that kind of recruiting framework, coming into other parts of where the skill use cases are within that skill-based organization.
Yeah. And I think a lot of organizations share the confusion internally about communicating about skills and the link with the previous competencies concept or capabilities concept. Could you maybe, from your experience, define what you think a skill is and the way it differs from competencies? The concept that was more around in the 90s and that a lot of business stakeholders might also associate with another HR project that got stuck in the middle. So how is skills different? I think it's important as companies do the internal sale to become skill-based, that they differentiate between those concepts. But how would you differentiate?
Yeah, I mean, I think a skill is really kind of the building block. It's really, the base element. And so when you think about, a skill, even in the broader definition of what I just described, you start with kind of a concept. So, what is a relational skill? So that could be something like, teamwork or collaboration or all of these different terms that we use to describe the ability to partner and connect and work with others. That could be, a technical skill. So you have programming capability. Then you go to tooling, and it's a specific tool or a specific technology or a specific programming language or these other kind of building block elements. And so when you think about skills, it really is kind of this full set of what are those building blocks across the different jobs and the work that's being performed in those jobs, that you need to kind of understand and leverage to be able to connect people to those opportunities and help those people be successful, and making sure they have skills for those different things to be able to work through. I think when you get to competency, most of the places where I've seen that and built some of those models is more in your kind of overall career framework. It's kind of your way to take a lot of the skills, and particularly the relational skills and some of the technical skills, and to be able to elevate those either across job families or even across the enterprise at the company level, to really kind of bring to life a lot of the expectations, if you will, around and behaviors around really living the values and living the core mission of the company. And so those are at that competency level, you're really looking at what is core and common to a larger group of people or to everyone in terms of what's expected to be successful in delivering the work and how you're delivering the work at the company. And so those are kind of different levels of elevation. I think some of the skills then kind of end up getting elevated to competency, and how they're applied within the organization is just much broader. And for slightly different purposes than some of these more kind of strategic, like, does this person have the skill to meet this minimum requirement for a job, as an example.
All right. So competencies are broader than skills. They cover more, and skills is a piece of that, you could say.
Subset.
Yeah, a subset. All right. Now that we got the definitions clear, I'm curious to really to understand, how did you get started on a skill journey? First of all, what were the focus points? What was the trigger? So I'll just let you answer. How did you get started?
So yeah, I was brought in to help build out modern job architecture. So really looking at our jobs, understanding the jobs that existed, and being able to really define those, I think, in a cleaner and better way, so that we could drive career systems, we could improve our hiring processes, we could do all the things that we wanted to do. And skills were a really big component of that. So we wanted to look at the responsibilities of the job, all those kind of components. But then we really wanted to understand, what were kind of the core and common skills, like we talked about, competencies across jobs or groups of jobs, and then what were really those functional skills that were specific to a job and really required that job to be unique from another job in a meaningful way. And so the journey really went down kind of a traditional job analysis path of working with subject matter experts from the business, really going in and doing research and analysis and understanding of building out those skills, and kind of working through, designing that architecture, which would have both the job and the skill component in it. As we were going through that, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to go and convince, the subject matter experts to come off the work and, to engage, and all the different, questions that you have to answer in terms of how is that going to be used and what's that going to deliver. And so we decided at that point, with all the capability that exists from an AI standpoint, from a back-end standpoint, and looking kind of at different data that we have on people from, the recruiting process all the way through their career, what could we understand from our data? Where is there signal on the different skills that we had that would allow us to be able to really go in and maybe curate those skills and come forward to those subject matter experts with a really informed kind of framework on a functional basis, and even at a job profile level basis, kind of a couple clicks below a job family, and really be able to define and codify that to enable a lot of our career and hiring processes. And so we had a team that exists of IO psychologists, so people who have background in skills and in these frameworks and competency modeling and job analysis and all these different elements and really strong expertise there. A lot of them had experience in selection and other capabilities where skills are leveraged. On the other side, we also had data scientists. And we had some IO psychologists that could do pretty advanced data science work as well in terms of advanced analytics and machine learning and deep learning and these different kind of AI capabilities, and then increasingly some of the Gen AI components. And so we pulled the team together and basically gave them the problem of, hey, we want to understand skills for each of these jobs, but we don't know how to do that in kind of curating the signal from all these different data sources, whether that was their resume or the job that they got hired on and what the requirements were, their internal profile, if they filled out, the skills and the information about themselves, what learning they've taken, all the different things that you can imagine, across the career journey. And so we kind of put this task to them and then shaped kind of a design that allowed us to go and curate what that signal looked like, what were the proper data sources, doing this within responsible AI, data privacy, requirements, all of those things to make sure that we're processing all this information and trying to curate all these skills accurately. We also went to the external market to pull in core skill architecture as a kind of robust starting point that we could compare a lot of what we'd done from the job analysis work and what we'd done from curating the skill signal using a lot of the AI capability to build out kind of an initial dictionary or an initial framework or ontology. A lot of different words get thrown around for this in industry.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we could really start to see, all right, we have all this raw data where we have information about people and the skills that they're using, like or needing or getting, placed in jobs or other things against across their career journey. Now we have kind of this kind of corpus or ontology or framework. We can now compare those and start to refine those in really meaningful ways. And what that allowed us to do was to build a model or a skill engine, I think is what we're hearing a lot about in industry, to really be able to do kind of quantify, if you will, a skill and place that skill in, a quantitative representation in this kind of fancy multi-dimensional space, in the machine learning frameworks and in the algorithms, to be able to understand that skill and how that skill relates to all the other skills that we had in our dictionary. We went a step further, and then also looking at on all the signal that we had on people, we could really understand then what are the skills that people have, and we could represent that and kind of have certainty and some confidence that the skill that we're identifying through our data sources is something that they possess. And so now that we kind of understood our skills, we understood, our skills and how they relate to each other, which is critical from a fairness perspective. If you think about things like, someone says partnership, someone says teamwork, someone says collaboration, those are all kind of the same thing, should probably get equal credit. You have to make sure that you're curating these models and doing that so that there is this kind of equitableness and fairness and things that are really, basically aliases of one another. And then looking at the adjacencies and other things in this model, what we were able to do is then build that to a next level capability, which was trying to then get into some of the use cases of, all right, if we know the skills that people have and we know the skills that we're looking for, now what we can do is we can kind of realize that initial promise of, let's take everybody that's in this job and let's see what's core in common of the skills that they're leveraging, or what are the skills that maybe pop out for the top performers and differentiate. And based on that, we could build profiles. So we could kind of quantitatively, using this capability, build a skill profile for every single job profile, the hundreds of job profiles that we had within the organization. And then we can go very quickly in job analysis and SME review and sign off from our functional leaders in terms of being able to really bring that to life and get the buy-in and understanding of what our skill framework and ontology look like. And then that leads to a host of additional use cases as well, where you can leverage the skills engine to really inform recommendations across and decision support, like across the entire career ecosystem.
Yeah. Okay. So summarizing, it started with skill demand. It started with skills to jobs. It then moved to the skill supply side. What are the skills of employees? And having those building blocks allowed you to then solve or at least think about use cases where you might solve this for, right? So if I hear it correctly, the journey really started as a data first journey. So really the job architecture work was the trigger. But am I right to assume that there, outside of, hey, we need to update our job architecture, there wasn't really any business demand for getting skills tied to jobs or skills tied to employees yet, but it was more a rabbit hole that you went down into?
Yeah, I think it was to solve that unique problem because that was the barrier that we were facing was the speed to be able to define that, to unlock those additional use cases, which were really, if I had to sum up the additional use cases, I think that were in scope, that were of interest by the business and did want to be realized. It was finding, jobs for people. So a person needs to find a job. Then we have situations where a job needs to find a person. Or a project needs to find a person. So we know what we're looking for, but we don't necessarily know where those people are, and we want to get them on the highest priority work. And then I think there's a set of opportunities, particularly on the career development side, around connecting people to each other.
Yeah, all right. So it sounds like there was a good foundation to get the skills data. It sounds like there was a clear use case to apply it to, or at least an idea of a use case, being the internal talent marketplace, connecting people to opportunities, making sure that the other way around as well, opportunities connected to people. That sounds super, super easy, almost as if it had to happen and it was a smooth process. But I'm sure, because with the many companies we talk to as well, there's lots of hurdles in moving an organization towards that kind of thinking within HR, but also especially outside of HR to the business. So was this a smooth process? And if not, what were some points of resistance that you felt in the organization to do something with skills data?
Yeah, and we were just starting a lot of that journey. So I think the framing around the job, analysis and the job architecture and those elements were really coming, through, and we were moving a lot quicker there in terms of really building that out and defining that. So that, was fairly smooth once we realized that we needed to make this shift and moving from doing this in a very traditional sense to using the AI capability and, our skills engine capability to inform that, to expedite things. I think the other pieces of then now we have this engine, we have this capability. The initial path that we took in addition to the job architecture was really to go after kind of that internal profile. So to use this as a recommendation to the person, the employee, to say, hey, we think you have these skills and these tools and this technology, and could you go in and kind of confirm that and really building that out. And I think where we faced some reluctance in doing that, especially with the product teams, was, well, why would they do it? What's the hook for that? And so I think we had a bit of a false start in terms of, if we build it, they'll come, because it was a no-brainer for us in terms of, well, if people are then validating everything that we've done kind of from this back-end capability and, all these algorithms and all this, data science that we brought to bear on it, then people would want to see, well, it's not just that I'm giving you my skills, what do I get for it? What's on the other side of this for me in terms of, are you going to help me find a job? Are you going to help me do this? Or are you going to help me do that? And so we stopped kind of, being as horizontal or trying to build things that really kind of could then continue to be a layer down from the actual use case and then going into more specific use cases. So the next, moment was, all right, we're really focused on more internal movement and internal mobility for all the right reasons, for career development and growth and moving people to higher priority work. How are we going to leverage this to be able to do that? Can we build a matching algorithm? Can we, go in and look at this and, go beyond the keyword searches and all the other things that, are now commonplace in terms of, screening and filtering and other things for job search, but build that internally, and really leverage that with our people internally to be able to deliver. And so that was the next step. So we built a rank algorithm kind of capability and actually showed that with the skills and the tools and the different elements that we had as part of this overall algorithm, that they were, two of the top 3 predictors that we had. And from a fairness standpoint and inclusion standpoint, equitability standpoint, they were really the cleanest and the best in terms of what we could bring forward. So we got some buy-in, and definitely, some interest, I think, in terms of being able to do that and look at, downstream opportunities to continue to expand that.
Yeah, I really love that. The enthusiasm at first to go super horizontal and to say, hey, we got skills to jobs and we wanted to bring it to the employees to help them build a skill profile. But then the pushback of why now, why would we care?
Mm-hmm.
And your realization that instead of creating new initiatives that take up lots of people's time, we look what's already there of the challenges and we look how we can latch on to that. And then you mentioned a couple of examples, one being a layoff round. How can we use skills to do it more effectively? And then you mentioned the hurdle beyond just the creating buy-in, which is, hey, we got the skills data from several places, but we can't infinitely keep drawing from those places. So how do we deal with that? So that's super interesting. What were some other applications that you used skills data for in that iterative, value-driven way? So once you pivoted from, okay, we won't be able to move the entire organization, let's focus on pockets. What are some other pockets? And this is just to show people what skills can enable and to spark their imagination a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And, the biggest one that we had, most recently, was in this kind of, the fight for AI talent that I think exists. We're in a kind of this new war for AI talent in the tech space and even more broadly. And so we have a need for all of these AI roles, for people to come in and really kind of bolster and emphasize the Gen AI components, with our large language models and other capabilities and all the different things that helps to drive. And so we did that. We kind of curated a few different AI profiles, because different types of AI that exist, based on kind of pockets and based on being able to look at what skills are common and not common, in terms of how, quantitatively in the back end they relate to one another. So we could kind of create these profiles on the back end. We didn't share those with the business, but we use those then to go and look out and see who are the people with AI. And we found hundreds of additional people with AI. And we said, all right, HR, go back through your process and validate these. Like, tell us if we got it right. And it came back it was about 90% accurate. And we felt like that was an underrepresentation. And so the anecdote, I'll tell is, we went to the 10% that didn't validate. And the first person that we pulled up had a PhD in computer vision. And, and working back with the HR, business partner, they just had a narrow conceptualization in terms of Gen AI, as opposed to, computer vision and, some of these other areas of the AI capability that we needed in different parts of the business. And so when we actually went through and looked at every single person and the definitions that we had for AI, we're about 97% accurate, in identifying these people. That really, I think, caught the attention of the full HR community and caught the attention, of leadership in terms of, I see the value in this beyond thinking about this, very vertically, as opposed to horizontally, in terms of, well, it can be a job matching thing for internal mobility, or it can help a sourcer on the front end, or it could, do this one thing. Now we're starting to see, okay, we can create these profiles, we can create the connection, we can, do something that's really kind of strategic and business driven and adding value at that level.
And I love that story because it just shows, if you take into account skill adjacencies, that your scope just broadens. It's the hidden skills. It's just, if HR thinks AI because of the non-expert view, they think Gen AI and they don't think beyond other types of either diplomas or other types of fields, subfields of that broad umbrella. And I think when you're looking for scarce talent, it's essential you get deep and you get broad, because you want to catch as many talent internally as possible, before then going to the external market, right?
Yep.
I wonder, in solving for those problems, specs of problems that you saw in the organization, Was there ever an exercise you made to quantify the impact of skills, to quantify what it could mean to the business as you went out and subtly tried to increase the attention on people analytics from a skill perspective? Was there any business case you ever made?
We had kind of the starting of business cases, and the ROI, plays behind them that will be continuing forward as we move. I think the core of what we were really focused on in kind of building those out and helping to shape this and to kind of build this into our priorities from a people organization standpoint, from a business strategy standpoint, were around key things. So efficiency was a big one. So that was efficiency in building out the job architecture, but also efficiency in screening, efficiency in connecting. So if we could match people to jobs faster, which is something that we did show, the impact that we had was that one, they went into the role a lot quicker, which was good for getting the work done. Two, they were more likely to engage in the opportunities that we were recommending to them versus what was coming back in previous versions of our algorithms on matching, and also in terms of just match or going and doing job search on their own. So we had a number of different elements in terms of kind of retention, quality, success, efficiency, and speed, especially in making the person to job to person connections, and built out kind of a metrics framework around that, which we coincided with our overall people organization metrics framework, to really identify, not necessarily something unique, but something that really fit with how we were talking about the success of, bringing the skill engine, skill capability forward, in things that work for all the different initiatives that were happening across the career journey.
Yeah, oh, super interesting. And given you you headed up the people analytics function, I also really wanted to ask you about the building a muscle to work with data and to work with analytics in an organization. Because we see across our customers, but also in general in the market, that companies vary in the maturity in which they use data analytics to solve for any kind of problem. It seems from your examples that you've given that there was some kind of muscle to jump on challenges and to try and think from a data lens. But how would you recommend companies that are way less mature or in the mid part of their journey, how would you recommend them to build that muscle to start thinking about problems to solve for data and actually go ahead and do that as well?
Yeah, and I'd say, every company is working with data at some level at varying, degrees of depth and complexity and the ability to turn that into value. That may not always be in the people organization or in HR. That may be, somewhere else in the business. And so being able to, I think, identify and partner with those organizations, if you don't have that strength, if that's not like a core, capability, if you don't have, robust kind of metrics and data, influencing decisions today, from a people and HR standpoint, what's finance doing? If you have engineering or IT or technology, what are they doing in terms of looking at, the analytics, looking at how they're providing decisions, support, from the capabilities that are being developed, because a lot of the skills work is, akin to product, or akin to, other aspects of, whether you're bringing that externally from a vendor or, developing some of that capability, maybe in-house with your processes and all of that. So I think start there in terms of creating some of the cross-functional partnerships, understanding the business language around how data is being used, how it's being consumed, how information insights are being visualized, how the narratives are being developed, and speak kind of in terms of the business and the business value and the ROI and the capability, and find opportunities for that. I think then you can start to bridge the gap and bring that back in, from a people perspective, and understand how do people fit within being able to help to deliver against that. And when you look at skills being a currency across all the different plays that can happen, with someone, getting hired or someone, performing in a new role or, whatever that might be, you can start to really kind of, integrate that into the framing, I think, from an HR and a people and people analytics capability, but also, help do that in a way that the business is going to buy in. Because sometimes the business will buy in faster than HR will in terms of their understanding of data and their understanding of what the value proposition is. You don't want to go without your partners in HR and in people. You want to go together. But I think having some friends along the way and core cross-functional kind of partnerships, and then being able to get to the business and play that back and understand what's working, what's not, in terms of how you're leveraging your metrics and your success criteria, and and talking about value and how you want to realize value from the skills plays that you want to make is probably the best way to go if it's not kind of innate and well ingrained. Fortunately, I've been in all the organizations were pretty ingrained with data, so I've had it a little easier from that standpoint than maybe other organizations, but that definitely be a path.
Yeah. And looking back, how ready do you think the organization was for a skill-based model?
I think they're very excited about it. I think now they understand it, and they understand what the benefits are. We use this as an amplifier for culture and trust and understanding. We ingrain this in a lot of things that we want to do from a career standpoint and a career narrative standpoint as we move forward. So it's really kind of a culture play as much as it's an opportunity to make those connections, create the path to opportunities, to move people to the highest priority work. It's really become something bigger. I think over the last 6 months of the understanding of where this can add value and what this can mean of making those connections.
The overarching lesson almost seems to be, even if everybody gets the value, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, the value chain of skills, it's easy. It's easy to understand.
Yep.
And even if you have the methods inside the company or the technology, let's say, to map skills, supply and demand, organizational context is important and is important to take into account. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, 100%. You've got to meet the need, and identify those opportunities to help people go beyond, like, everyone's going to agree, yeah, it's skill based and we need skills, and like I don't think we ever heard anybody say anything against that. But help me understand how this can solve the problem that I have right now is a very different bar that you have to be able to achieve in leveraging the skill capability that you're bringing forward. And so having some of those successes and showing that value above and beyond things that were even traditionally there is really what you need. So you have to build a little, sell a little, iterate, check that context, and then continue to drive forward in a way that builds that trust, adds value, and allows you to continue to grow and improve.
Very cool. And Robert, as a people analytics professional, to close off and to point people to where you learn about new things, where you learn about the skill space, can you name either places where you learn, where you read, where you listen to testimonials or to use cases about skills or recent developments in technology? And what can you recommend our listeners in that regard?
Yeah, the way I do it is I try to stay close in terms of the different vendors and external partners, that are out there, because they all know each other. They all know, what's going on. I didn't have as many opportunities for vendor plays because we were building everything internally. So I don't want to benchmark too deeply and start taking intellectual property from other people. That's not the right thing to do either. But really kind of looking at, what's out there, looking at kind of the thought leaders, your Bursons and Greens and others in terms of what's being evangelized, what's coming up in these conferences, what are people talking about? And then looking more broadly in terms of, the HR tech space, as you mentioned. So where are skills showing up in that? Like, what need do I have? Is that in recruiting, or is that in, careers, or is that in, where is that? And what are skills? How are skills being used in that, and being able to do, some of those searches? The things you can do now with AI, and asking it, to curate and submit some of these prompts around it, will probably point you in a pretty good direction, to start. And so I think there's a lot of things that you can consume, that are generally available through searches, generally available from starting to create some of these networks and understandings for the problems that you need to solve. I would say, the academic literature, other things. I mean, I'm still waiting for one of my book chapters that has a lot of these pieces to be published, and now it's 2 years old in terms of what I've got in there. It's just very lagging. So I think the more you can network, the more you can really start to see what's out there and who you can partner with and who you can play with is going to be your best avenue for leveraging this. And don't be too discouraged by skills engines and machine learning and Gen AI and all these things. Like, they're pretty consumable, and I think they're pretty prevalent now, to where if you really dig in and take a look, you can get some explanations and some broader understanding of how these things are being leveraged and being done so effectively.
Yeah. Just a small follow-up on the HR tech vendor market as a source to learn more. Isn't that more confusing than it is clarifying oftentimes?
It can be. And so, everybody's kind of come in from a different position, or everybody's trying to leverage AI, in a different way. And I think, the key is, I wouldn't say don't go there and don't consume it. But I would say, as you consume it and as you consume the different offerings, that are out there, some vendors are going to be giving you a dictionary. And they're going to kind of give you that as a path to buying all the different bolt-ons, of how you can do everything talent, in there. And is that something that you want to do? Maybe, maybe not. Whereas other groups are going to be, very strategic in terms of just the skills component and what they're offering and how that can connect into, other offerings that are out there, other, products that you might be using from various vendors. And so I'd still consume that space, kind of see what makes sense to you, helps you to kind of build the story and the approach that you want. And I wouldn't worry as much about like the buzzwords and all this stuff. Like, really get to the core. What is it that they're trying to solve? What is it that they're trying to answer? And like, what's the methodology that they're using to do that? And does that make sense? Does that make sense for your use case? That makes sense for your current, how skills are currently operationalized or could be expanded and be developed. Those are the things that setting kind of what people are talking about in kind of a common framework that you understand, and then being able to set that in the context of what you need to deliver, for the business and for the organization that you're working for. I think you can still get through a lot of the differentiation and sales pitch and, all of that in terms of what's out there in the market.
All right. Awesome. Last question, as is tradition on this show. What question are you dying to ask the next episode on this podcast? Knowing that we interview skill practitioners, people like yourself, who are doing stuff with skills, who are trying to move the organization in becoming skill-based, what would be your question to our next guest?
I thought about this one. I think the one that I'd be really interested to hear is, of all the skill use cases that are out there, what's the one that we're not going after, like as an industry or within the organization, that really has the opportunity for value, but just isn't getting the buy-in, isn't getting the airtime, and why do you think that is?
Interesting. It's the same question that Josh Starr from Workday asked to the next guest. So there's already partly a response to that. I'll definitely ask it to the next guest, because I think it's an interesting to hear different perspectives on. But it's funny to hear that there's a serendipity there and a common interest. Let's see how they roll with that. I'll definitely keep you posted on the response, Robert. But thank you very much for the conversation here, for your time, and I hope we speak more.
Yeah, thanks for doing this too. This is such a great resource for everyone out there, doing the skills work. So keep it going. That's
why we do it. Awesome. Thank you. See you, Robert.
Thanks. Enjoy.